Chapter 14. Digging Holes. Gary made it home later. I was still sitting on the sofa with the book in my hand. "How did it go today? Any luck?" Gary asked. I shook my head. "Not today, maybe tomorrow." "Too bad. Feel like grilling some burgers?" Gary opened the freezer, took out 2 frozen patties, and headed for the back porch. We ate at the kitchen table. Gary broke the silence. "Tony, I know today was tough. Malcolm can show you what to do, but you have to be the one to take the action. There are no free lunches. You are going to have challenges. Do you understand?" I understood. Yeah, it just wasn't easy. I really thought I would get a chance somewhere. "You will. Just keep plugging along." We washed the dishes together and then headed off to our separate rooms. I read and prepared myself for another day of job hunting. I wasn't going to let one bad day keep me from taking the action I needed to be successful. I was up by 7 on Tuesday morning. I met Gary in the kitchen. He was rinsing the remains of his scrambled eggs off his plate. I made my way to the cabinet and grabbed a box of cereal. After I had my first bite, Gary spoke. "Tony, I have an idea. You need a job, and I need more workers. Do you want to work for me?" I didn't need any time to think. Yes. Gary said, "Malcolm was right. There was a simple answer. I can't believe I didn't see it before." I was almost stunned. I had gotten a job and wasn't even finished with breakfast. At this rate, I might be a millionaire by lunch. We were both relieved that our problems had been quickly resolved for our mutual good. Within an hour, we were headed for the job site. At the site, Gary parked his truck and greeted the other workers. He introduced me, and we all shook hands. Gary pulled me aside and took me back to the truck. In the bed was an old, beat-up shovel. Gary handed it to me. "Take care of this," Gary said with a smile. "This is the same one I started with when I got out of jail. It doesn't look like much, but it's one of my most prized possessions. Brought it out of retirement just for you." I looked at the shovel and then at Gary. I wasn't sure if Gary was serious or not, but I decided I'd better treat that shovel with care. "Go get in line with the other guys. They'll show you what to do." I made my way to the other workers and followed their instructions. I dug my way to lunch and then to dinner. After we quit for the day, I put the shovel in the back of Gary's truck and we headed home. We continued this routine for the rest of the week. Each day we drove to the site. Gary inspected his backhoe and dug, and I dug with the other guys. Gary and I shared breakfast and dinner together, and we were becoming fast friends. I was amazed at how far Gary had come since he had gotten out of jail, and Gary told me he was impressed with my hard work and good attitude. After all he had done for me, there was no way I was going to let him down. I was going to work as hard as I could. Gary gave me my first paycheck on Friday. We both felt a sense of pride. As I stepped back, paycheck in hand, one of the other workers, Lance, approached Gary. Lance seemed nervous. I was standing by the truck and could see everything. Gary listened to Lance, nodded, and then responded. I knew enough to tell it was a tough conversation. After several minutes, Gary smiled and politely shook Lance's hand. Gary came back to the truck. Lance went to his car where 2 of the other diggers were waiting. They loaded into Lance's car and disappeared. "What was that?" I was curious and asked Gary as soon as the door closed. Gary took a deep breath. "Well, Lance just told me that he is quitting. He's starting his own company, and 2 of my other employees are going with him." I couldn't believe that anyone would want to quit working for Gary. In the short time I had known him, Gary had been fair and honest. I had worked at places where the boss barked orders and then disappeared, leaving the workers to get the dirty work done, no matter how ridiculous the request had been. One of the things I liked best about Gary was the fact that Gary was willing to do whatever it took to get the job done. Gary was often right next to me, shovel in hand. And Gary never complained or criticized. I'd ask Gary why he digs, too. Having that shovel in my hand is a reminder of how much I have and how far I have come. It really makes me grateful, he'd said. But right now, Gary didn't seem grateful. He was disappointed. He continued, and besides those 3 quitting, Lance told me he got his first job, and it was one I had bid on. Gary started the truck and headed home, lost in thought. I wasn't sure what to say, and the ride home was silent. At the house, Gary finally spoke up. We need to get to bed early. We meet Malcolm tomorrow for our run. Oh yeah, I had almost forgotten. I wanted to see Malcolm and tell him about my job, but right now, I was worried about my friend Gary.